right, and here is the new Ghoul MTS, what is it, 225 Revolver. This one here is the one that Michael with Fanfiction Props painted for me, and he brought it over before I actually got a chance to film this video and stuff. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the assembly on it and get it all set up and all that good stuff. But yep, there you go. Let's get this off to the side here. Here is the kit, the way it'll come. And get all this out here. I'm trying to do this without making so much racket. Get this off to the side. Also on my website, under the assembly diagrams folder, for the folder for this, there'll be the parts diagram that shows all the different hardware and stuff that's in this. Set this off to the side. But okay, so yeah. So here we have the cylinder. 4-shot. They changed it from 5 to 4. Here's our foregrip. Our main barrel piece. The sight rail. We have our left and right halves of our frame, which the way that I did this makes this really super strong. We have the 4 regular shells that come with this, but I also make the various shells that come in his bandolier, so those should also be up. So let's go ahead and we'll get into the smalls and stuff here real quick. We have our left and right grips. We have our trigger guard. We have our hammer. Our rubber tube, I'll go over that in a minute, but that is actually this piece that's right here, so that when you break this over, it bends up just like it does in the show. And then we have just a bag of various little pieces here. We have our orange tip. We have our barrel, the sight rail barrel release. We have our trigger. We have our little hand and our hand spring. And these are the 2, I forgot to pull that off of there. These are going to be the front loops of that. And let's lay these off to the side. We have this piece right here. This is one of the pieces that the rope loop thing on the bottom, the cable thing. We'll just end up spreading this apart and popping this around, and the other one ends up going on to the trigger guard. But we'll cover all that when we get to that point. This is our indexer. This actually goes into the back of the cylinder here, and this is what the hand actually pushes on and spins it and stops it correctly. Let me pop that back out because put that in yet. And then we have our various little springs and screws here. What we're going to have is we're going to have one long screw and one short screw of the larger size. Then we're going to have this longer screw, but of the small size. So there's the size difference in diameter. And we have a long 45 millimeter Phillips screw. We have just one of these big flat blade screws. That will be the one that the barrel hinges on. We have a couple of 6 millimeter Phillips head screws. Those will go into the grip of the frame. We have 3 different set screws here. a 12 and 2/16. And you can tell them apart. Of course, the two 2/16 are the same length, and of course the 12 millimeter is shorter. Then we have two dowel pins, and on the parts list, one is a 1/8 1/4 inch long, and the other one is an M3 5 millimeter. The 5 millimeter is the shorter of the two. So just that's all you need to know. I mean, they're the same basic diameter. So what we'll go ahead and do is first, let me go over the normal stuff. You can use thick super glue or whatever to assemble this, or CA glue. That's what I use. It's a two-part, basically, thick super glue. You have the glue and then the activator that you spray on it, which it pretty much instantly sets it. I'm not endorsing this brand. This is just a brand that I've been using for a long time and have had great luck with it. No bad batches or anything like that. You're going to need a regular Phillips screwdriver, a flat blade screwdriver, which for the flat blade and the Allen wrench, I'm just going to be using my bits for my bit driver, my little cheap $10 Harbor Freight bit driver. But a flat blade and then an Allen wrench, and the Allen wrench are going to be for the headless, set screws. And on one end of the set screw, there's a place for an Allen wrench, and it's a 1.5 millimeter Allen wrench. If you have one of those fold out sets that's metric, it's the 1.5 millimeter. So let's get this set off to the side here, and let me check and make sure my glue is not dried shut real quick, because that happens all the time, especially after I screwed this on too tight and split the lid. But that's okay. I go through glue pretty darn fast, so it won't be long before I'll have another new bottle that I'll need to mess around with. All right. Got that all over my Allen. So, okay, let me put the lid back on this real quick. So the first thing we're going to do is we'll go ahead and we'll do the barrel and the sight rail. This is one of the things that I would go ahead and glue together before you start painting, just because this is kind of like a all one piece. So when you paint, your primer and your paint will fill in this little seam that's around the barrel where the barrel and the sight rail meet. Let's go ahead and get our glue and our activator. And on here, all I'm going to do is I'm going to put glue all down around in here, and then I'm just going to put a small bead down the barrel, because you don't need a bunch, because it'll smush out if you put too much. And that's about all I did. I'm going to take my part and spray where it goes. Now I'm just going to pop it right in there. Make sure that it's straight. The barrel has kind of like a little recess in it that will help keep this straight as you're gluing it on. And I'm pushing down and forward because we want to make sure that it's flat back here. Pretty much set, but go ahead and hit it one more time for anything that's going to be wanting to come out. Hairs off of there. All right, so, and then here's the other thing. We'll go ahead, we're going to screw the cylinder on. If it was me, what I would do is go ahead and screw this on, and this is how I would paint it. One, because it doesn't matter if this is ever painted, the front side of this, because you're never going to see that. Two, it'll help you from getting glue in the pocket where this sets. So it'll help you keep from increasing the distance, because all of this is pretty set distances for all the moving mechanisms to work. So what we'll do is I'll screw this on, and I'll kind of show you why it'll be just as easy. But you'll need this 45 millimeter Phillips, and what we're going to do is just kind of jiggle it around till it doesn't want to fall. What we're going to want to do is we need to make sure that we screw this in straight. So pay attention to your gap around this, and kind of what I do is just kind of put my fingers on both sides. And you can push down on this, and you can kind of manipulate this the first couple turns to make sure it's going in straight. And here's the thing, if you screw this in and it's crooked, you didn't screw anything up, take the screw completely back out and you can kind of start a whole new route in there if you need to. Like I need to bump this up towards the sight rail a bit, so I'm just going to kind of upward pressure as I screw in. I think that's good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and just screw this on in here. It's kind of a long threading, I don't know, long screwing, whatever you want to call it. Okay, you get to a point, it tightens completely down, and this barely moves. What we want to do is we want to back this off. And see, there it's spinning fine, but there's still a drag on it. Barely move it again, still a little bit of drag. We're going to move it a little bit again, still a little bit of drag. Basically, you want to get right to where there is no drag. So look, right there, no drag. And the reason being is if there's drag, the hand that pushes this has even a harder time moving this cylinder. If there's any drag, it's just increased pressure on that hand trying to spin this. And as we get in here and put this together, before we end up gluing the indexer in, you should be able to get it to pop in. We'll pop it in and we'll test the function of everything before we actually glue it in. But see, this is together now. So if you wanted to paint this, even if you wanted to prime it and do some sanding and stuff, you can still do all the sanding that you want to do, whatever it is you want to do. And when you paint this, even from the backside, when you paint, you shouldn't be able to get glue or any paint down all the way to that screw that's going to interfere with this spinning. And same as in here, if you paint, remember, lighter coats, you can add more coats and more coats. But if you go too thick, it's easier to put more paint on than it is to take off. And you don't have to get full coverage with every coat that you put on. Just remember that. Like when I paint, I literally just dust it, let it set until it's almost dry, dust it again. I probably 5 or 6 very just light coats, and finally to where it builds up that it's a complete solid coat. But even when you're painting, this will move just fine unless you just gob paint on and it runs down in there. And if you did, you've got more issues than that anyways. So pretty much the only other thing that we need to do to this is we're going to put together the spring and the barrel release, which the barrel release is this dude right here. And we need the smaller diameter spring. And we need the shortest. Remember, there's two 16 millimeter long and then 112, the shorter of the 3 set screws. So that's all we need there. And what I always do is I start my set screw on one side, and you can look at this and make sure it's 90 degrees that way and 90 degrees that way as you're starting to screw it in. There you go. And then I screw it in just until it starts to protrude on the inside, and I'll back it up just a bit. The reason is we do that so we don't have to sit there and fumble with this thing while we're trying to hold pressure in the spring in here. So if you notice there's a hole down in here, we're just going to take the spring, hold my tone right. Actually, I can't see what I'm doing because I'm trying to make sure you guys can. So if you drop the spring in there, that's all that's needed. And the other thing that's needed is if I had actually finished cleaning this out real quick, get the little support material piece out of. Sorry about that. Did I get, yep, got it all. So on the front side, you'll see there's a little hole right there. This goes in like this. It's got the hook piece on the bottom. And so the spring will actually go up top. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to hold our mouth just right. We're going to try to push this in. Make sure we don't let it go and the spring and stuff go flying across the room. which I'm about to do because I'm having to look for what I did with the Allen. And this isn't so bad. And we'll want to start screwing in there, like it hit this, instead of hitting the hole, it hit the side. So I'm going to back up. And I totally missed it that time. Hold on a second. Hard for me to hold this and show you guys. There we go. So it started going in. And I actually just realized I may have needed to clean out the hole on this barrel release, but we'll see how well it moves. There we go. Never mind. We're good. So the barrel release, that's all it does right there. So right now, technically, the barrel is, well, no, the barrel's not done. So again, then this piece is, you know, you're going to paint it your wood color and stuff. Before we glue it onto there, you know, we have our little eye hook piece here that gets glued into the bottom. What we'll want to check, and I try to make sure that these holes, you know, sometimes depending on how these print, they may close up the hole a little bit. Like this is the upward facing side, the non-shiny side, and the hole's perfect. Then you get to this side that's shiny. So it may make the diameter a little bit smaller. And normally when I'm cleaning these kits up for you guys, I take a file is what I use because this is the proper sized file. But you can take everything from a flat blade screwdriver and just, you know, cram it around the hole. It's not much to clear up. It's kind of, and the same with the hammer as well on the back side and the trigger. You just always want to make sure that when you take your screws that you can pass them through without any resistance. But these, and while I have this off, this is the, well, I don't know if this is actually the easier one for me to show you, but if you see these cable loops here, these will open up, and basically what we're doing is we've got to pry these open. I promise you it's not as bad as it looks. I'm just trying to do it for so you guys can see. What we'll do is we'll spread them open and get it on each side of the hole. And as we wiggle this around and move it back and forth, the arms end up popping into the hole. And if for some reason you get one side that won't go in, then you might need to widen the hole just a little bit. But normally wiggling it around and twisting it, it goes ahead because it's itself is squeezing really hard on that. So move it back and forth and there you go. So that's pretty much all there is to that. And I'm going to go ahead and take this one back out. All right, I'm going to go ahead and glue this one into the bottom here. So I'm just going to put a drop of glue. Well, that was great. I had a drop and then let it suck back in, and when I pushed out, an air bubble formed in it. And so this little piece would be like silver. So you'd want to paint this piece separate before you put it in here. But it just goes in, it sets, bottoms out in there, so it's just like that. We'll let it set for a minute. Let it dry. There we go. Nice and done. So, okay, on this, really, like, you can push up and it'll pop on the barrel, or you can put it on this way. But if you notice, there's an indentation that matches this indentation. So if you put it in there and push back, it locks where it's supposed to be. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some glue, and I'm just going to put like a bead of glue down the bottom and right here, and I'm doing it on the edge so that if you do it on this outer edge, it's going to squish out. I'm just knocking everything over right now. And I'm just going to pop that on and push it where it goes. And I'm going to hold some pressure on it. I'm pushing this way and squeezing the barrel. And that way now it goes ahead and sets, and secures and do all that stuff. Well, come on, Mr. Bullet. So, all right, so, whoop. Oh, I got a glob of glue on there myself. Yep. Blade and right off. There we go. All right, so the barrel is complete. That is as complete as need to be. So we're going to go ahead and move on to the main frame of this. And on this, it's very simple. I went 5 or 6 different ways on how to make this and make it a very simple build. So this was actually the easiest, and I'm glad it turned out to be the easiest, because I like, for the strength of this, how I put the print lines and stuff in it, the print planes. So what we're going to want to do is these 2 holes right here. And we're going to we work on the right-hand side. So if you had this in your hand, it would be the right-hand side is what we want to work on. Because these holes are slip holes. Those won't actually screw in. But on this side, we'll actually take one of these and we'll look, make sure that it's running 40, like it's 90 degrees to the body. And we look one direction, do about a half a turn, turn it up, do another about half a turn, and we go ahead and screw this in. Now, before you get crazy, you can be screwing this in and run it right out the outside of this, which is what you don't want to do. So what I do is let me see if I can kind of get, like, if you get light reflecting on this really well, and so I'm going to hold it so I can, you can kind of feel when it bottoms out in there. But I'm just going to screw this in, and after I get in 4 or 5 turns, I'm going to slow down and actually feel it bottom out. But if you turn it just a little bit, now I want to do this to see, y'all see that little bump right there? That's because it's pushing against it. So I'm just going to back out a half a turn, and that bump actually goes down. It still shows a mark because it stretched the plastic, but on feeling you can't feel it. So basically and you don't even have to have them screwed in that far. I just want to make sure that we cover that, because I don't want any of you guys, start spinning these in, make this 90 degrees both directions, and just crack and run out the backside, because that's, even though that doesn't end anything and you can sand and prime that, it's best not to even have done it to begin with. So there we go. Like that. See, they get really tight when they get to the bottom, but some people, you're just cranking away and you're not paying attention. Next thing you know, you hear a crack, or you look and you got this big old hump back here. And the other way to make sure that you've got them all the way in is go ahead and put this together, and you see the front has a notch that matches that. And if you just press it all together, if you push the body together and there's no bulging between the seams, you know that you have those 2 all the way in place, okay? And what that allows us to do now is we can take the hammer and the longer spring, and the longer spring, if I clear out in there, got a little boogie or something in there, hang on. Like I said, I try to clear all this out as best as I can for you guys when I'm cleaning all these. But if you twist it counterclockwise, not clockwise, clockwise will make a spring tighten in the hole. Spin counterclockwise while pushing, and it will just go ahead and pop all the way in there and stuff. So, all right. So the next thing, if you see there's a hole right there, this is going to be the peg for the hammer. My brain's not working right now. And we want to, so basically it'll go on just like that. But what we want to do at the same time is we want to get a little squeeze, hang on, put the spring down in the hole. Take this, put it on there, spin it, and then pop it down. And that should allow that right there. Okay, that's all it does. Got really, really good spring action. And so then the next thing is we just need the shorter of the medium springs, because it's going to go into the back hole right there. And you've got your trigger that goes on there. Well, there's also a matching hole right there. So what I found the easiest way to do is slide that on halfway, put the spring into the back of the trigger, push that down just a little bit more on there until it's kind of pinching the spring. Push that back, and when you go down, there we go. So now we have our cocking mechanism. Okay. So the other thing we're going to do real quick is, now this is what's called the hand. And this is on most revolvers. This is the piece inside that when you cock the hammer back, it's actually pushing this up, and it pushes the indexer and rotates that. What we need to do is this 3D printed spring right here. If you notice, it has a bigger curve on one end than the other. That bigger curve, get that little piece off of there. When we glue this on, it actually gets glued on. So if you were to put pressure on that spring, if you notice, it fits the contour back there. Now you can hold too far forward and you make a gap. You want to hold that to where that sets on there. I'll get it to where you guys can see. See? And so if I'm just pinching back there, the gap up here is just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to put a little drop of glue on the back edge. I'm going to go ahead and spray that. Going to hold my fingers on both sides, because we also want to make sure that it's in line, which is what I'm doing here. I've got my fingers on both sides, making sure that it's all in line with each other. Holding a little pressure back there. Let that dry. So there we go. So now we're all springy and stuff. So what we're going to want to do now is we have these two dowel pins. And like I said, one of them, the shorter of the two, is the 5mm long one, which is the one that we need right now. This dowel pin goes down in that hole right there in the hammer, okay? And we want to glue that into that hole. And I mean, you can glue, if you want to, before you put the hammer in, you can glue this in, or now, you know, that I'm telling you that, you're like, behold, I already put it in there. Just wiggle your hammer back and forth if you want to, and you can take it right back out. It's not that big a deal. But it's this bottom corner hole. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little bit of glue. Okay. And I may have too much in there, so it's probably going to squish out when I put this in there. And it did. So what I'm going to do before I spray any activator is I want to get the majority of that glue. Whoop, and it stuck to my finger. Get off there. Get out. Come on out. Okay. I want to make sure it's setting in the hole nice and straight. Golly, I'll put a lot of glue on there. Boy, I'm telling you. Anyways, that's the way it ends up. That's the way we want it. I'm going to make sure this is fully cured. And what it is this hand sets on here. I may need to clean off some glue. No, I don't. It's fine. And this hand sets on here. And if you notice on this other side, there's this, of the frame, there is this little space. And if you just push that in there, now here's the one, probably the one part about this model that some of y'all will cuss me on, because here's what we have to do. Let me put the hammer back in here real quick. It's very hard for me to show you on camera because the gap is so small. but nope, can't hit the hole. There we go. Hold my tongue just right. Get in there. Basically, these two holes are what's going to line up with these set screws we put in here. That's not hard to do because when you pop this front together first and put it down, they basically line right up. But the next thing that we have to do is we also have to get this hole on the hand to line up with this at the same time. It sounds worse than what it is. I've done this 2 or 3 times. Let me see if you guys can see, which I seriously doubt you can. Yeah, you're not going to be able to see, but when I put this together, I can see the bottom side of this, and I can see this dowel pin. And so what I need to do is, like, you can have a small flat blade screwdriver, but you can also kind of manipulate it a bit by the end that's sticking out there. So I'm looking at this, and according to what I see, I need to bring this up, not that far, and over, or you could just be a total pain in the butt. There we go. Yeah, it's just going to fight me the whole way, but that's fine. So what we're going to do is, let me put this back together. And this is the only trial and error of this whole kit. And unfortunately, you know, it's them taking it. See, like, let me pull that apart. You see, you can see the 3 holes in there, and you can see the dowel pin. So basically, I just need to manipulate this around. See if I can. It's actually harder to do right now than normal because the lighting is not set up for me at all. Okay. So anyway, so let me go ahead and try to get this lined up. Like I said, it's hard to do. You guys aren't going to see me doing it anyway, so. It's the only pain in the butt part about this build. Nope. Thought I had it. It's got to be almost right there. Nope. All right. Like I said, this whole thing, it's very easy to build, but this is the pain in the butt part. Yeah, come on. And I'm also using a white background, the table here, looking through the crack, and I can see it, trying to manipulate it and get it where it needs to be. Promise you I can get it. Hold on, I think I done kicked it. Yeah, I done kicked it way up out of the way. And unfortunately, this was one of those things that no matter how I tried to do this, and actually if you hold it right about there, that should make it a lot closer to being lined up. No matter how I tried to do this, one piece, this was the one piece that there just really wasn't a good way to try to. I wish I had better light for me. You guys, there's plenty of light, but for me, not so much. Oh, there we go. Look at that. There we go. See, that was so easy. I mean, that's no big deal. Anyways, when you cock that back, you should see this come out like that. So what we're going to do now is take our, I don't like that big Phillips screwdriver. Let me get this smaller Phillips screwdriver tip here. What we're going to need is the 2 shorter Phillips screws. They go into the grip right here. and we will just screw this sucker together. And you don't have to worry about these coming out the other side or anything. So this is the funny part is I was going to model this shotgun that this is modeled off of about 1.5 years ago. I was going to model this because normally on these the chamber flips out to the side. So this piece and this piece, it rotates out this side. I get why they changed it to make a breakover, but man, you want to talk about a pain in the butt for all of this to function. It's one reason Colt and all of them back in the day very quickly learned to move away from these cylinders that folded on the barrel, because you have to have a pretty good repeatable distances for all of this to work and function correctly, and it's a pain in the butt. Okay, so this is screwed together. So here's one of two things. You don't need to glue this in here, because when you bolt the barrel on, the barrel holds this just fine. But if you want to glue it, you can pull it apart like that. Just stick your finger in there and put your little bit of glue there. The reason you don't really need, besides the barrel, when you glue this trigger guard on, the seam goes through there, but you're going to glue the trigger guard on, and that trigger guard will actually glue and hold the front seam. The only place that I shouldn't say worry about, that needs to be glued is if you pull this top part apart, you need to put some glue down in this top right here, in that top seam. And that's the only place that really needs to be glued at all. If you don't, when you cock this and you have the barrel on here, you will very visibly see it spread this, and it won't rotate the stuff correctly. So basically, I'm just going to see if I can wedge 2 fingers in there. And I'm going to, don't put too much in there, because you don't want a bunch running back and getting on your hammer and all that other good stuff. I'm going to squeeze that together. I'm actually going to cock the hammer back so I don't have to worry about it coming out the backside and getting. I'm going to wipe off the excess. And this is one of these things, you can do this whole assembly and paint afterwards, because if you want to paint your hammer and paint your trigger, and the reason I'm saying painting is some of y'all will want to get rid of this seam that goes around, but once you put the grips on there, you barely see this little seam that goes around. But if you're one of those people that you want to get rid of the seam totally, just you can paint your hammer, the exposed part of your hammer and the exposed part of your trigger, do this assembly, come through here, put glue all this together really good, and then do your painting and your priming and stuff. And that's one way to do it. Me personally, after I got done, you don't see this seam because the barrel's closed. You don't see this seam because, you know, you have a trigger guard and all that here. Basically, the only place, and I'll actually just show you on the one that Michael did, you have this seam, and he asked me if I wanted to fill it in, and I told him, no, don't worry about it, because I want people to be able to see that that's what you're looking at. And that's not bad at all. Originally, I was going to like split the body, but the way, won't even get into that story. Anyways, the way that it is literally the best way that I could possibly come up with doing this. We'll go ahead and we're going to put the trigger guard on. And now before we do, like I glued that and stuff, we wanted to make sure this all functioned and moved correctly. Okay. And like I said, there's not much in there for it not to be correctly. If you got the hand onto the dowel pin, that's really the only thing that you had to do. And so then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glue this in place. So now this is where when we put glue on both sides of the seam there, put glue there. Now I'm going to squeeze the front. The back's not that big of a deal because the seam. And then I'm just going to hold this for a second. All right. Get some of these little boogies and stuff off of there. So there, that's all good. There we go. So now this is our functioning part there. I'm going to go ahead and I'll glue the grips on. Again, you'd paint these separate, wood grain and stuff. We'll go ahead and put them on there. So I'm just going to go through and I'm just going to put glue. Don't mind my shaky coffee hands. I definitely have had too much today. And I'm just going to spray the back of this and just pop it down into the little groove that it goes into. I'm going to hold that and then I'm going to go ahead and get glue down. There we go. Head and that's going to squish out a bit. We'll go ahead and let it squish and I'll wipe it off. There we go. Pop that together, squeeze. Like I said, I need to wipe a little bit. I got a little crazy there. But that, I do like how wide they ended up making the width of his grip and stuff, because it became like really nice sit in your hand and stuff. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and slide this barrel down in there, and I'm going to go ahead and latch the top. Spin this in a place that'll lock that. Okay, so what I'm going to do now, from this side, you'll see a small hole and a big hole. The big hole is so the head recesses down in there. So take this, and you can start it with 1 or 2 turns with your finger. Let me grab my flat blade. And sure that it is straight going in there. And one reason you want to have the barrel in this position is because there is a stop in here that keeps the barrel from folding over too far. Keeps a nice 45-degree angle. All right. So see, the barrel can't go further than that. I built in a stop inside of the frame right there. So that's as far as it goes. What we're going to want to do now is our other dowel pin, the longer one, and our indexer. If you notice, that looks like that. This side right here has a little hole in it. Want to go through and you know what? Actually, the funny part is, hang on a second. I shouldn't have put that in yet because I done got it stuck. Okay, I got that back out. Also, and hopefully y'all saw the edit further on in the video, I ended up putting the wrong dowel pin into the hammer because I'm very, very smart and I very, very prepare for my videos here. You have a longer and a shorter. The longer dowel pin is what goes in the hammer. I put the shorter one in there. There'll be a big old like warning on that part of the video. So, so I have a shorter one. The 5mm shorter one goes in here, and the longer one goes into the hammer. But you guys, by the time you get to the video, you'll already know that. I'm just going to express my tiredness, because that's what happens when you try to do all this stuff and you're tired. So anyways, I put a little drop of glue in there. Not too much so it doesn't squeeze out everywhere. And I think literally in every one of my videos, I'm like, man, I try to prepare enough for this, but I'm blah, blah, blah. It's the way it is when you work for yourself and it's just you and you got to do it all. You get sidetracked and overwhelmed and all this other stuff. So anyways, long story short, never mind. So this is what it looks like. It's got the dowel pin. The reason we have that dowel pin is because if you look in the front right there, or in the front face of this frame, there's a matching hole there that kind of has a sloped wall going in there. What this does, and it's the same thing that they had to do on the show one, because This mechanism right here that they came up with, it's okay, but when I started seeing in designing this and seeing how they did it, I was like, well, they're going to have issue with the barrel stain, and then that's when I noticed exactly what they did. So you can sometimes just click that in there and not actually glue it yet. And just like in the show, every time you open or close this, you will do it by the barrel. And the first couple times you do this, you're going to have to, and actually I might just want to go ahead and glue that in. This dude right here, you'll want to kind of rock and get it kind of worn in a little bit. Here, actually, we'll pull that back. Because this is a tight fit, which is what we need it to be. And if it seems to be too tight of a fit, let me close that. And all of this is, okay, there we go. Anyways, I popped that out. I got wedged in there. Let me go ahead and glue this in. So the first thing you can do is push this all the way down in your cylinder and make sure that it sets flat all the way around. And the reason being is we want to make sure that there's no like little boogies on the edge or anything that's keeping it rocked up on one side or the other. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to go through here. And just put a little bit of glue down in each one of those holes and just on the edge. And I'm going to spray my part and pop it down in there. Hold it all the way around. Hold some pressure on it. Okay. So, quick before we do the hose and stuff. On here, all of this requires, like how this one works, release and it moves up. All of that is me working it back and forth and getting it to set correctly. And that's why you push with your thumb, pull up on the cylinder, which helps pull the pin out. And when you push down on the cylinder, this latches over. Now, what you'll run into, and even on this one here, because I didn't clean the edges, because you know this print's flat, and so you might get an edge around here. I need to come through and actually knock this edge off is what I need to do. So anyways, so if you grab that and push it together, it goes in, and you'll see that that has a tendency to want to stay back. I had a choice. I can do this to where it's loose fitting so that the first time you click it, it's nice and loose, or make it a kind of a tight fit and allow you to sit here and kind of work it back and forth. Because what you want to do is, see this thing, it's not coming open at all. It's rock solid. It's not going anywhere. But so, and it latches beautifully. This will pop down into the hole, and even that will require a couple times of you popping it. But it's hard to tell too that on this hole, there we go, this hole, the top edge is actually slanted to go in to kind of ease that pin going in and out. But that's literally all it takes. You push up with your thumb and you open up, pop your shells in, close it. So we want to check our rotation here. And it may have a tendency to want to roll backwards when you pull the hammer. Just work it a bit, because the internals of this, well, I realize is in half the pistols on the show, I saw 3 different ones. One of them is they have one where it doesn't actually break open, and that's kind of the one where he's sitting here fanning it. In some of the close-up shots that they did, let me get that line back up. In some of the close-up shots that they did, there's not even a hand in there that lines up in notches, and you can actually see on the cylinder that there's not even notches for a hand to catch, and that's for them, you know, for that close up where he's opening it and reloading it and stuff. So it's kind of one of those things that the internals is kind of a cheated thing anyways that they did. So this hand is actually made onto the trigger itself, where on most revolvers, the hand and the trigger are separate. And the trigger would act like it does now, but the hand would have a little arm that goes over and pops over a cam. My peacemakers and all that stuff are that way because that's the way that they were built. But to ease the complexity of this, it's already bad enough that it's kind of a pain in the butt to get that lined up to pop this together. Normally when you would cock this, this comes back and the trigger's released and it locks the cylinder. Well, normally when you would pull the trigger, the hand or the bolt wouldn't come back down. But in this case, the bolt comes back down for just a second when you pull that trigger. So until you get this worked in, like on here, when you pull this, it doesn't flip back. On this one, because the spring on that hand is so new, it has a tendency to want to jerk back a little bit right now. So as you go through, and the best thing you can do is just kind of hold some tension on it. What happens is it'll let this spring that's on the back of that hand finally get seated in that slot, and it will start working exactly like it's supposed to. But that's the easiest way for me to make something like this without being a complicated build like my peacemakers and my Navy that have all the tiny little internal parts that a lot of people don't want to really dick around with. And I don't blame you. Some of it's a pain in the butt. That's why this split body was the easiest way for you guys to lay the parts in there with the springs. At least I feel it was. All right, on the hose here, when we glue, now real quick on this, if you want to put a real metal cable, you can go buy like a 1 millimeter or 1.5 millimeter, like the braided wire that you get at places that sell jewelry supplies for you to make jewelry and necklaces and stuff. They also sell the rolls of the braided wire, and about a 1.5 millimeter would be a good size. And you can buy the clamps that you can clamp down with a pair of pliers. So you could take it, loop it through, pull a loop, take your clamp it down, come up here, do the same thing. But even with the wire, now I did the rubber hose because if you guys carry this to like Comic Cons and pull it in and out of like the holster that Michael with Fan Fiction Props is making, this allows some give so you don't end up breaking anything. This is all pretty stout. I purposely printed stuff the direction I did to make it as strong as possible. So even with a metal braided cable on there, you would probably be okay without breaking anything. But again, that's why I gave this. But even metal cable, rubber hose, metal cable, being wound up, it has a natural tendency to have a curve in it, even when you have a cut piece. When you glue these eyes on, or these loops, you want to make sure that the curve when these loops are mounted is going to be curving towards the body. And the reason being is, if you notice, like this is pulled nice and straight, but when I open it, well, hold on, there we go. When I open this, because the curve is naturally already facing up, as soon as you take the tension out of that, this folds up like it's supposed to, just like it does in the show. And if you put the curve the wrong direction, no big deal. Just unclip these and flip your whole, the whole thing over. So the reason I'm saying that is because we'll want to assemble and do this down here first. So this very first one, I made it to where you can just push them on. What we can do is go through this little weird process of popping these in here. So there's that. And then make sure that one's apart and there's no boogies on the end. See, it's a little bit easier to do this when the pieces that you're spreading it around are actually, whoops, missed the hole, are actually mounted, so you're not, you know. All right. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to keep the loop going up, and I'm going to glue it to this one first, because down here we have more room to work with our hands. Because the hose, I add just a tad bit extra on it. So all I did was put a little drop of glue on there, make sure that the bend is going the right direction, and hold my tongue just right. The one thing about the hose, and even Michael at Fan Fiction kind of found out, this neoprene hose doesn't like holding paint. And but he ended up getting it to hold paint just fine. The good part about that is that's a good wear place for in and out of holsters. So if your paint starts coming off this flexible hose, no big deal. Take off as much of it as you can and paint the hose again. But like I said, if you end up wanting to go with like literally a metal cable, you know, you're good to go there as well. So see, I've got the curve this way. So when I bring this over, the curve is going to be like when I loosen this, see when it comes back up like this. So if I take this and pull the slack out of this, it's just a little long. So I need to take off about, what is that? I can take off about 1/8 of an inch or a little bit more. Because another good thing is it's rubber hose, so it stretches. So we're going to put that on there, and that looks about good. Actually, I might just take off a hair more just so the hose will be pulled a little tighter. There we go. So I'm going to go ahead and put me some glue on this nipple of this. If you notice, that's about all the glue that I put on there. And I'm going to take this and squeeze that on there. Make sure I don't pull the other end off because I don't know if I sprayed it or not. And by the way, if I've been a little weird in this video, I've had like 3 different interruptions where I've had to pause this recording and talk to some people. So it sometimes if I'm in this video and I come back and I seem a little off track, that's because 30 minutes has passed. So anyways, so let that set. So if we were to pop this open, if I get this, hold my tongue right. Sorry. I did not get I popped it open, I heard something rattle. I did not get my dowel pin. Anyways, first, see that? So that opens just fine. I did not actually get enough glue on my dowel pin. I was kind of wondering if I did or not because it seemed like I got no squish out of that at all. So let me try this again. Get in the hole. Sorry, I had to use my belly for a second, you know, our third hand. It was hard to see how much glue I actually got down in there because I'm trying to hold it for you guys and I'm sitting back here a good ways. I do that so the top of my ugly head don't get in there. So make sure that's all dry and stuff. But anyways, that's what I was talking about with the natural tendency of your bow, of your cable, or your hose. When you open that, and then again, your shells, you put your shells down here, and you first stick them in, just make sure that the holes are nice and clear. But And again, like I said, I have the other ones that are on his bandolier and stuff. So, but there you go. So unpainted, painted. And don't forget your orange tip, because most Comic Cons won't allow you in, and plus you don't need to be running around outside with one not on there. So there is the built before and then the after. If you have any questions, just ask them in the comment section, or just go to my website, shoot me an email. I try to get back to you guys as quick as I can. Again, I am a one show pony, or one pony show. Yeah, that's it. But again, thank you guys. I hope you enjoy it. If y'all have any suggestions for future things, just shoot me a message and let me know. Thank you.